And on the line right now is our good friend Stuart Varney from the Fox Business Network. He's the anchor, of course, of Varney and Company, which starts weekdays at 9:20 a.m. Hey, Stuart, how are you?
Brian, I am well. How about you guys?
Well, I was well until I looked at my portfolio. As modest as it may be, it didn't look real good after yesterday.
Wait a second, Brian. You've had a wonderful run-up so far this year. Okay, so you got a bit of a pullback yesterday, but we're right at 15,000. Did you really
Actually,
think that
we're
the Dow
below
would be at
15,000
at the middle of June?
Well, but we're below now. We're going backwards. We're down 200 points yesterday.
He's a bit of a whiner, isn't he,
Well, I don't
Stuart?
mean to be a whiner, but I mean, I guess the thing I'm worried about is does this portend bad news on the horizon?
Look, I think we're moving away from the position where bad news on the economy is good news for the stock market because Ben's going to keep on printing money. I think we're moving away from that. I think bad news on the economy will be bad news for the market. I think we're moving to that new position. And that, by the way, is true all over the world. Japan, lots of other markets around the world have come down because of this shift in sentiment. Look, the plain fact is, Ben Bernanke is at some point going to have to quit printing all of this money. He's hinting that he's going to be doing it later on this year. That's a hint. A mere hint of that is enough to take some of the steam out of the stock market. But I don't think you're going to come all the way down again. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to be somewhere around where we are now to slightly lower for the next couple of months.
Stuart Varney, I don't know if you saw this UCLA economics forecast that came out, but it was devastatingly bad. It basically said this isn't even a recovery. It's not even normal growth, what's going on in the economy right now with regard to real GDP growth and also the jobs growth or lack thereof. Meanwhile, this is in the shadow of President Obama going down to North Carolina to talk about jobs in the economy. What's he got to say?
The president will say we are in recovery mode, and you can make the case that we are recovering. 2% growth, slightly lower unemployment rate, about 150,000 jobs per month being created. You can say that. You can call that a recovery. Fact is, it is the worst and weakest recovery from any recession since World War II. And that's really not very good. And, you know, it is profoundly un-American if we get into a new normal of 2% growth and 7% unemployment. I don't think that's good enough, but it is, nominally at least, a recovery.
So there are some new studies out, and you know, I think it sort of makes sense. I mean, we all sort of felt this way, and now there's sort of data to back it up that shows that, you know, Obamacare's is reaching sort of new lows in popularity.
Yeah.
Or you could look at it another way: its unpopularity is higher than it's ever been.
Yeah, 49. The latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll out today says nearly half, 49% of those polled say it's a bad idea. That proportion has never been higher. And I've just got the latest numbers on layoffs. Layoffs actually are down, but there's an increasing number of layoffs because of the approach of Obamacare.
Isn't that something?
That is something. That is not politically popular. I think the president and his party will pay a political price for this going forward, because I think we're looking at chaos, quite frankly, Brian.
Well, and then, you know, we've been talking about, I'm sure you've seen this story, Stuart, about this little girl who is trying to get a lung transplant. And the image of Kathleen Sebelius, the Director of Health and Human Services, just sort of, I don't know, she didn't come across very warm-hearted and basically saying, I get it, it's sad, but, you know, this is what happens. Some people live, some people die. That's sort of in the background here with regard to Obamacare. Beyond the financials of it, it's the image of the government sort of being in charge of people living and dying.
Obamacare politicizes your health care. Do you want politicians and Washington bureaucrats deciding on the level and cost of your health care? That's the question that Obamacare poses. And I think the answer from most Americans is, we don't really want that. Yeah. I think it's pretty clear.
You know, we've all sort of been irritated with the IRS story. You know, the IRS is you know, playing favorites. They're picking on groups that seem to be the political enemies of the White House, going after Tea Party groups, etc. But there's a whole nother story out there that has to do with how they've been spending our taxpayer money and on these expensive conferences, some $50 million spent on conferences. And we've seen these egregious videos of IRS employees dressed up like Star Trek, characters. What do you think is going to be the end result of all that?
I think that stokes the outrage. The general public, I think, is more outraged at the lavish spending than the general public is outraged at the targeting of political groups.
I'm not sure, but you may be right.
Well, I suppose it depends on which side of the political spectrum you're on.
Sure.
But lavish government spending doesn't go down well with either side of the fence when you've got $1 trillion deficit or a $600 billion deficit. And by the way, you are going to see Dr. Spock, or the IRS version of Dr. Spock, testify in a matter of hours, right round the corner from where you are right now.
I would suggest to you that Dr. Spock is dead. I think you're making Mr. Spock. Just saying. I hate to be a geek about it.
Are you using a Vulcan mind trick on Stuart Varney?
Please remember, I saw the original Star Trek series way back in the 1960s. Unlike you youngsters who don't remember the original.
We may have trouble with tribbles, but not with Stuart Varney.
That's right. It's always a pleasure, Stuart. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.